Alright guys, in this video we're going to style some menus. So we're going to create a vertical like side menu and then also a navigation bar that goes horizontal. So let's create a new file called 09_menus.html. And for the title I'm just going to say menu styling. And let's add in our style tags. And for the markup, we just want to add a UL, and I'm going to give it a class of side menu. Okay, we're going to have a list item with a link inside of it. Doesn't matter where it goes. And then let's just say home for the text. And then we'll copy this down a few times, and this one will be about. This will be services. And this will be contact. Okay, let's save that. Let's open it up. And there we go, looks horrendous. First thing I'm going to do is for the body, I'm just going to change the font family to, let's do Arial. And next thing we want to target the side menu, which is the UL. And I want to get rid of the bullets because by default, ULs have these disk bullets. Now you can get rid of these within the UL or within the list item with the list style property, and we want to set that to none. So we'll save that. That gets rid of them. You can see we also have the Arial font. Next thing I want to do is add a border around the whole UL. So we'll say border, and let's set it to 1 pixel. I want to do a light gray, so I'm going to do DDD, and let's do solid. Save that. Good. Let's do a border radius just to add a slight curve. We'll do 10 pixels. And let's set a width of 300 pixels. Kind of shorten it a little bit. And let's set the padding. Now, by default, unordered lists have 40 pixels padding on the left, as you can see, that's pushed over. So doing padding 20 pixels on all sides is going to overwrite that. So if I save that, you can see now we have 20 pixels on all sides. And then I think that's all I want to do for the UL. So now we're going to focus on the list items themselves. So side menu list items, and we want to set the font size a little bigger. By default it's 16. We're going to set it to 18. I think I have this zoomed in. Let me just see real quick. Yeah, so that's normal. That's 100%. So font size 18. I also want them spread apart quite a bit, so I'm going to use line height and set it to 2.4 em. Save that, and it's going to spread them apart. Let's see, what else do we want here? Let's do a border bottom on each one. And I'm going to do dotted for the style, 1 pixel, and the same color as the UL border. So you can see that each one now has this bottom border. Now, one thing I want to show you is the borders I put them here to separate the links, and we don't need the last one under contact, so we can actually use a pseudo selector called last child to target the last list item. So let's say side menu li : last dash child. Okay, and we'll get into some of the other pseudo selectors later on. We can select the first one, we can select anything in the middle, we can do like all the even, all the odd, and it's pretty powerful. But just for now, we're going to use last child and set border to none and save, and now the last link here, or the last list item, doesn't have a border. So for the styling of the actual links, the color and the underline, we have to target the A tag. So let's do side menu list item A, and let's change the color to 333. Let's get rid of the underline with text decoration none. Save that. And for the hover, right now it doesn't change at all, so I want to actually change the color for that. So let's say side, I don't know why I keep doing slide. Let's do lia : hover, and let's change the color to coral. So now when I hover over a link, it turns into the coral color. All right, so I think that that's pretty much it. It's not the best looking menu, but it looks a lot better than the standard unordered list. So now we're going to move on to the navigation menu. So I'm just going to put a comment right here, side menu. And down here, let's just copy this up. So I'm going to do Shift Option up, and this one I'm going to change the class to navbar. And let's just put a couple line breaks in between these two to kind of just separate them a little bit. All right, so this is our navbar. So we want this to go straight across, and we want these links or the list items to float. So let's go under, actually we'll go above since navbar is at the top. All right, so we want to target the UL, which is called navbar. And the first thing I want to do is remove the list, the bullets. So we're going to say list style none. Okay, now I want to take away all the margin and all the padding. Save that, good. Let's see, next thing we want to do is add the background. I'm going to use that Facebook style blue, which is 4C6 CA0. Okay, we'll save that. Let's add a border radius of 5 pixels. Okay, now I'm going to go down here and we're going to say navbar list item, and we want to float these because we want them to be side by side. We don't want them to go down. We don't want them to be vertical. So let's float all of the list items to the left, so they'll kind of just stack side by side. So I'll save that, and it happened. They float now to the left, but the background is now gone. Since we floated it, it kind of collapsed the background. So the way that we can fix this is go to the navbar, the parent element, and we want to add in overflow and set that to auto and save. And now we get the background back. All right, because now the background is going to basically pertain to whatever content is inside of it. And you can set this to hidden as well. If you have some content that goes outside of the element and it has a scroll bar, and let's say you don't want that scroll bar there, you can set overflow to hidden. And I'm sure we'll run into that later. But now that we have the background, let's start to style the links. So we want to say navbar li a, and let's change the color to white. Okay, we'll take away the underline. Save that. And we want to display as block. Let's actually move this up to the top. Okay. Now, since we display block, we can add some padding, and it's going to give some space on the top, bottom here, also space in between all of the links. So let's say for each link we want some padding. We want to do 15 on the top and bottom, and we want to do 20 on the left and right. So let's save that, and there we go. So it kind of filled out the wrapper, the navbar UL. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's make it so that when we hover over a link, the background changes color. So I'm just going to make it a slightly darker than the blue it already is. So let's say navbar list item a hover, and we're going to do a background color, and that's going to be, let's see, what is that going to be? 446,190, which is slightly darker. We can also change the color of the text. We'll just do like a light gray, slight change. So now if we go up and we hover, you'll see that it changes the background and it takes up the whole area of the link. Now, sometimes you might see people put the padding on the list item, but that's not really a good idea, especially if you want to have the hover state take up the whole thing like this. Otherwise, it would just take up like a square around it, which doesn't look very good. And you'll see different ways to create nav bars. I think that this specific CSS is probably the easiest to do this. And you'll see if I make this bigger, it just stretches along. If I make it really small, well, actually, we don't have enough links here, but if we had more links, it would just knock on to the next line, which doesn't look very good. So later on, I'm going to show you how to create a more responsive nav bar where it will kind of, when you get to a certain screen size, like for a smartphone, they'll actually switch to going this way, and it'll look nice and neat, centered, and stuff like that. All right, so next I quickly want to look at the display property. You see how I did display block here? We can change inline to block and vice versa. There's also something called inline block. So we're gonna take a look at that in the next video. All right, in this video, we're going to look at the display property with the values inline, block, and inline block. Now, display is very important because that's actually how we implement Flexbox. It's how we implement the CSS grid, but we're not going to get to that just yet. We'll do that a little later. So in this video, I want to show you how to turn block level elements into inline and vice versa, and also look at inline blocks. So let's create a new file called, let's call it 10_inline_block.html. And I'm just going to close this up. And for the title, we'll say inline and block styling. Okay, so in the body, I'm going to start off with a UL. I guess I don't even need to give it. We're only gonna have one UL, so we'll just use that as a selector. But this is gonna be like a menu, so we'll do an A tag in here. This will go just nowhere. And let's say that these are like categories. Maybe it's I don't know, a list of blog posts or something like that. So we'll just say like technology. And for this one, let's say business and I don't know, fashion. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. And by default, list items are block level, right? If we open up our tools and we use our element selector and we look at the list item, you can see that it goes all the way across and it knocks the next one down. So that's a block level element. Now we can change that to be inline, and in fact this could be a way to create a horizontal menu, horizontal navigation. So let's go up into our styling and let's grab onto the UL and let's set it to, I'm sorry, not the UL, the LI. And let's set it to display inline and save. So notice that now it's going this way, and the bullets are no longer showing either. Now you probably want to spread these out a little bit, so we could do like, actually I'd probably put these on the links. So LIA, and let's set padding right to 10 pixels. Okay, so it's gonna spread them apart. Actually, let's do 20. All right, so that's how we can change block level elements to inline. Now let's take an inline element such as an image and make it block level, and I'm going to show you a reason why you would do this. So let's put a couple line breaks in, and we'll put in an image, and inside of our folder we still have the img folder with the leaf.png. I'm going to use that. So in here, let's do /, so the current directory, and go into the image directory, and we want leaf png. For the alt, I'll just say my image, and save that. Okay, now this is an inline image, or I'm sorry, an inline element. If we grab the selector and we take a look, you'll see how it doesn't go all the way across. If I were to put another image in, actually if I just duplicate this and save, it's going to go next to it. It doesn't get pushed on to the next line. Now I want to make this a block level element. Let me get rid of one of these. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to add margin auto, because I want it in the middle. If I were to do that now, nothing happens because we can't do this. We can't do margin auto on an inline element. Okay, it needs to be block level. So we'll simply say display block and save, and now we can actually add margin auto. I can't tell you how confusing that was to me a long time ago when I was just trying to simply center an image and margin auto just wouldn't work. I didn't realize that the element had to be display block to be able to do that. All right, so these are two situations where you would want to display something that's normally inline, or I'm sorry, normally block as inline, and normally inline as block. Now, let's say we want some divs here, some box divs like we've been dealing with. I'm just going to put a couple line breaks. And let's do a class of box and an H3. We'll just say heading, and then let's put paragraph lorem 20. And let's say we have 3 of these. Okay, we'll go ahead and save that. And let's say we want to align these going across. Actually, you know what? First, let's style them a little bit just so we can kind of see the outline and stuff like that. So we'll do what we've been doing, just give them a quick background. Border. Actually, let's not even do a border. Let's just do padding, 20 pixels. What else? We'll do margin bottom, 15 pixels. And we want these to display horizontally. So obviously we need a width, right? So width, let's do 32%. Now if I save that, we get that width, but they're still on top of each other because by default divs are displayed as block. So maybe we just need to do inline, right? Let's do display inline and save, and that doesn't work. And the reason this isn't working, and it'll show you right in here in VS Code, this property width is being ignored because display, you can't use width on inline, okay? And the margin is also being ignored. So the solution to this, if we want these to go across, is to use inline block, which is basically like a mix of both. It goes horizontal, but it also allows us to add widths. So let's change it to inline dash block and save. Now this is getting knocked on to the next line because, again, we have padding, so that's getting added to the width because we didn't add the box sizing property. So let's go up here. And let's say box. Actually, you know what? Let's just put it. That's what I'll usually do, but we can just put it in here. So box sizing, border box, and save. And now you'll see that they're aligned side by side. We can probably even do 33. No, let's do like 32 point. I don't think I mentioned that. We can do decimals and percentages like that. Okay, so that looks pretty cool actually. But yeah, so we have display inline, display block, and display inline block. And then later on when we get to flex, we can do display flex. We can also do display grid. And I'm gonna talk all about that and the different properties that are associated with that as well. But yeah, so that's that. In the next video, we're gonna look at positioning. There's different types of positioning: relative, absolute, fixed. So I want to explain what the difference is between all of those in the next video. All right, guys. So now we're going to talk about the position property, which has to do with positioning elements in certain places on the page. So we're going to create a new file here called 11_position.html. And let's put in our head body tags, and for the title, we'll just say CSS positioning. And let's do our style tags. And as far as the HTML goes, I just want to have 5 boxes, and we're going to format them to just be square colored boxes, and we want to position them in certain ways. So each one will have its own ID. Let's do box 1, but I also want them to have a class of box because that's what we're going to use to create the height and width. And let's do 5 of these. Okay, so this will be box 2, 3, 4, and 5. And let's go up here and style the box class to have a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. Now if I save this and we open this up, it's going to be blank because we have no backgrounds for these boxes. So each one will have a different color background. So let's grab box 1. Let's give it a background of red. And then I'm going to just copy this down so we have 5 of them. And let's do box 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we'll do red, yellow, green, blue, and orange. Okay, so let's save this. And now everything by default has a position of static. Okay, if I do a position here and say static, that's actually the default. I'll save it. It's the same. Now I just want to show you a quick screen right here that has all the possible values of position. So static is the default, and it's not affected by top, bottom, left, and right properties. In CSS, we have properties where we can, let's say for top, we want to move it from the top a certain amount of pixels or percentage. We can do that, but we can't do it if it's position static. Okay. Relative, we can use these values, top, bottom, left, right, and it'll cause them to be moved from their normal position. Okay. And whatever its normal position would be on the page, we can move it from that. Now, absolute is different because absolute, it pertains to its parent element. So if you have a parent, like let's say a div that's surrounding other divs, you would make the inner divs absolute and the outer div or its parent relative, and then you could position it within that parent. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example of that. Fixed is actually positioned to the viewport, meaning the whole browser window, so it'll stay at that place even if you scroll down or whatever. And then sticky is similar to fixed, except you can stick it in a certain position, like at the top. Okay, when you're scrolling down, if you want it to stay at the top, you could use sticky, and this is used a lot for menus where you always want the menu to show at the top no matter what, so you can navigate the site. All right, so I'm going to give you examples of all of these. So we already looked at static, that's just the default. Let's change this to relative. And since we set it to relative, we can actually use top, right, bottom, and left properties. So let's say we want to push this, let's say 50 pixels from the top, and from the left, we want to push it 50 pixels. And I'll save that, and notice the red box has now moved 50 down and 50 over from the left. Okay, and if we didn't do position relative and I save, it doesn't work. Okay, so it's going to be from its natural place. We can move it. Now absolute, like I said, has to do with inside of a parent. So box 2 and 3, I'm going to make absolute, but I'm going to put them within a container class or a div with the class of container. And if there is no relative parent, it's going to use just the body, okay, or basically the whole browser window here. So let's do that. Now 2 and 3, which are the yellow and green, are within the container. So up here, just so we can see the limits of the container, let's give it a width of 500 pixels, a height of 500 pixels, a background of dark gray, and let's position it relative, because remember the parent has to be position relative. And I'll save that, and there we go, there's the container. Okay, now box 1 and box 2 are within the container, but let's say we want to move this one 100 pixels down from the top and 100 pixels over from the left. So if I go to box 2 and I say top 100 pixels, and left 100 pixels. Save it. It doesn't move because it's still static, right? Now, since I want it to move 100 pixels down and out within its container, I want to set it to absolute. So let's say position absolute and save. And now you can see that it moved down 100 pixels and over 100 pixels within its container. Now box 3 is also within the container. So let's just copy this, and let's do, this time we'll do from the bottom right and save. And now within its container, it went from the bottom up 100 pixels and from the right over 100 pixels. So you can precisely put things wherever you want within, positioned absolute within a relative container. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, before we move on to fixed, I just want to mention something, and that's the z-index property. Notice how box 1 is behind the container. So if I wanted to move this in front, I could use the z-index property. So let's go to box 1, which is our red box, and let's add z-index. And if we do just a value of 1, that should do it. Let's save, and now it's in front. So the higher the z-index, then the closer to you it's going to be. If I were to add to the container, which is the big box, if I add a z-index here of 2 and save, it goes in front of the red box because obviously 2 is higher than 1. And you can also have negative values as well. But let's get rid of that. We'll keep the red box up front. But I just wanted to mention that about z-index. All right, so let's do fixed. So box 4, let's say we want position to be fixed. Now watch what happens when I save. Watch what happens to the blue box, or actually the orange box. It seems to disappear, but it didn't disappear. What happened is it's under the blue box, because when it's fixed, it's pulled out of the flow of the document and put right on top. Okay, and this would be the next position after all this stuff. Now, if I were to scroll down, you would see the orange box because the blue would just stay where it is. So let me give you an example of that. We don't have enough content to scroll, but if I just add a crazy height to the body, we'll be able to scroll down. So let's just give the body a height of like 4,000 pixels and save. And now you can see we have a scroll bar. And as I scroll, see how the blue box just stays in a fixed position? So that's what that's going to do. So if you have a web page where maybe you have like an ad or something that's really important that you always want to stay on top, you would use fixed for that. Okay. And the next one I want to look at is sticky, which is similar, but you can actually have it stick in a certain spot. Like let's say the orange box here, we want it to stick to the top when we scroll down. So for box 5, let's say position sticky, and this is used a lot for menus because a lot of times you want the navigation menu to stay at the top no matter where you are on the site. Now where we want it to stick is top 0. So let's save that, and now you'll see the orange one is on top of the blue, and we can change that with the z-index. But let's scroll up and watch when I hit the top with the orange box. It stays there, okay? I keep scrolling and it still stays at the top. So it's really good for top menus or navigation menus. All right, and just to show you, box 5 is orange. If I were to give this a z-index, let's actually give this a negative z-index. So -1 and save, and you can see it goes behind the blue. So hopefully this gives you some insight on the different values for position as well as how z-index works. Now positioning like this isn't used that much in modern websites and UIs because responsiveness and having your layout look good on mobile devices is very important. And when you do things in this way, it's not very mobile friendly, okay? Unless it's like part of a very small area and you have stuff positioned absolute within there. That's still going to look good on a mobile device. But yeah, this stuff isn't used as much anymore than it used to be. All right, so in the next video, we're going to start to look at form styling. And I'm actually going to give this one to you guys as a challenge. I'm going to give you some hints, and I want you to try and style a form based on all the properties that we've learned about so far. All right, guys, so now I'm going to give you a challenge. I want you to style a form that looks like this. It doesn't have to be exact, but something similar that looks pretty decent and clean. So I'm going to give you all the HTML. I'm going to give you even the classes and all the elements we're styling, along with some hints. So in this lecture, you should find a file called formstyling_start.html. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a file called 12_form_styling.html. And I'm going to grab everything that's in that start file and paste it in and just go over it real quick. So let me just close this up. And let's take a look at the HTML first. So we have an ID of container that wraps around everything. And then we have a class of form wrap that wraps around the form. Okay, so this part right here, we have an H1, a paragraph, and then in our form, we have some fields. Each one is wrapped in a div with the class of form group. And inside the form group, we have the label. We also have the input. Okay, so we have first name, last name, email, password, confirm password. Then we have a button, which has a class of BTN. Okay, then we have a paragraph, which is this part right here. And underneath the form wrap, we just have a footer that says already have an account, log in here. So that's the markup for this. Now up here you have everything that's going to be styled, all the styles that I'm going to add along with some hints. So I'm going to go along and just give you some hints here. So as you can see, I actually brought in a font from Google Fonts called Railway. So you want to use that as your font family. I have an asterisk here. It says may want to add border box for box sizing so padding does not affect the width. Okay, we've talked about that quite a bit. We should also reset the margin and padding. In the body, I'm just saying the background color is going to be this right here. Now I'm not saying that that's all you need to put in the body or that's all you should put. It's just a hint. Okay, in the A tags, underlines are ugly, so you probably want to remove those. Container, so remember margin auto on the left and right will center a block element. So you want to center the container and remember margin auto. All right, and I'd also suggest using a max width for responsiveness. You also may want to add some padding. Now the form wrap is the white area around the form, so this whole box right here around the form and the heading and all that. So figure out how to style that. The H1 in the paragraph, you want to center these. Remember the text align property. The form wrap, or the form group I should say, each label and input is wrapped in the form group. So this is a form group, right? So you may want to add some margin separating these. Label should be turned into a block element, okay, because we want the label to be on its own line, and we don't want to use line breaks. I only use line breaks to give you guys examples. You don't want to use those in your actual layout. So turn that into a block element so that the next element pushes on to the next line. Inputs should reach across the form wrap 100% and have some padding. By default, inputs are very ugly. They're very thin, and it won't go across the whole thing. So you might want to set the width to 100% and add some padding. So the form wrap button, which is this right here, should wrap across 100%. It should also be displayed as a block. Okay, background color is this hex right here. The hover is this color for the button. Let's see, the bottom text is smaller, so you might want to set the font size smaller for the bottom text. Footer, which is this right here, should be centered. So remember text align. And the footer color, or I'm sorry, the footer link color is this right here. So that's a lot of hints. So I'm going to give you guys this as a challenge to try and recreate this. Okay, and don't just skip it, really try it. If it looks absolutely insane and nothing like this, don't worry about it. Don't get discouraged. It's kind of a tough challenge if you're just learning CSS. But just give it a shot, okay? And then in the next video, I'll go over it and I'll give you all my styling. And it doesn't even have to match mine, Okay, as long as it looks decent. So I'll see you in the next video, which will be the conclusion. Alright guys, in the last video I gave you an assignment with some HTML of a form and a bunch of classes and IDs with some hints inside your CSS and your styling. So in this video I'm going to go through and I'm going to add my styling, and don't worry if yours doesn't match the my exact CSS, that's fine. So let's start off with the asterisk here. So as the hint says, we might want to add border box for the box sizing property so the padding doesn't affect the width. We also want to reset the margin and padding. That's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and set box sizing to border box, and let's clear out the margin and padding on everything. Okay, so I'll save that. Now all the margin and padding's removed. So we used Railway for the font. As you can see, it's already brought in here. So let's go ahead and actually I'll put that back. Let's set the font family, and we want to set that to Railway and sans serif. Okay, we'll save that. Now we have our font. And the hint there is the background color, which is that hexadecimal value. So let's do background. You could do background or background color, and we're going to set it to 344A72. And we'll save that. There we go. So we should also, well, actually no, we don't. Yeah, we'll set the color to white here. We are going to have that white form wrap, but we can just change the font color in there. And then the last thing I want to do here is set the line height to, let's do 1.8. Okay, so let's see, underlines are ugly. So let's remove that. Remember, text decoration. I want to set that to none. That will get rid of all the underlines. Let's go to our container. So remember, we want to center the form. So we want to use margin auto, and we also want to set a max width, and we may want to add some padding. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to set the margin to auto, but on the top and bottom I'm going to set 30 pixels just to move the container down a little bit. Okay, and we'll set a max width, and it's a pretty thin or narrow form, so we're going to set this to 400 pixels. Okay, and then let's set the margin. Oops, I'm sorry, not the margin. We already did that. We want to set the padding to 20 pixels and save that. Okay, so next we have the form wrap. This is the white area around the form and the heading and all this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say background. Let's set that to white. And then for padding, I'm going to set that to 15 pixels on the top and bottom and 25 on the left and right. So since our text is white, our body text, we want to change the color of this form wrap text. So let's change that to 333. Okay, so that's our form wrap. Now let's move on to the H1 and paragraph. We want to center these, so we want to use the text align, and we want to set that to center. We don't want to center everything. That's why I didn't add it to the form wrap. We don't want these, the inputs and stuff centered. We just want the heading and the paragraph centered. All right, so each label input is wrapped in form group. So what I'm going to do is just add a margin top to each form group. So margin top, let's do 15 pixels. Okay, just to push each one down. So for the label, we want that to be displayed as a block level element. So let's use the display property, set that to block, and I'm going to change the color to, let's do 666, and save. Okay, so for the inputs, they should go all the way across. By default, they don't. And then we also want them to have some padding because they're much too skinny right now. So let's do that. Let's say we want the width to be 100%. Okay, we want it to go all the way across, and let's add 10 pixels padding to each input. Let's also set the border to, let's do DDD, 1 pixel solid, and let's give it a kind of a rounded border. So we'll say border radius, and let's do just 5 pixels for each one. Okay, so that makes the inputs look much cleaner. All right, next we have the button. So button should wrap across 100% and display as block. Background color is this, so let's first of all just grab that and set the background to that. Okay, we'll get rid of that. And let's set the display to block. Okay, so I'll save that. And then we want it to go all the way across, so let's do a width of 100%. Okay, so now you can see it goes all the way across. We need some padding here. So let's do padding 10 pixels all the way around. We want to bring it down from the top input. You can see it's kind of stuck to it right now. So let's do a margin top. Remember, margin is the outside. So we'll do 20 pixels, push it down. Let's also make the color of the text white. So we'll say color white. And what else? Let's do, let's see, I think that's good. Let's change the pointer to a cursor. Notice that if we go over a button, it doesn't change to a cursor. We want that to happen, so we'll say cursor pointer. And now when we hover over it, we get the cursor, or I'm sorry, the pointer. All right, so let's see, what do we have next? The hover. So I wanted to have a kind of a different color, or just get a bit lighter on the hover. And you can see I actually gave you the hexadecimal value here, so we're just going to go ahead and add the background and make it that color. So now if I hover over it, it actually gets darker. All right, so the bottom text, which is this right here, we want to make that smaller. So the default, remember, is 16 pixels. So let's set the font size here to 13 pixels. And I'm also going to move it down a bit by doing a margin top of 20 pixels. Next thing is the footer. So this right here, we want this to be centered. We also want to push it down a little bit. So let's say text align center. Oops. And let's do, let's see, the color is fine for the text. Let's do margin dash top, and let's move it down 10 pixels. Okay, so now it's centered, it's moved down. Last thing is the link. So I gave you the color for the link, so we're going to change that. Let's say color, and we want, oops, what happened? There we go. So paste that in and save, and that's it. So don't get discouraged if you don't have this exact CSS, or if you couldn't do it, or if you can only do part of it. That's absolutely fine. If you're just getting into CSS, then this is kind of a tough project. So we're going to move on, and in the next section, what I want to do is take what we've learned in the HTML section as well as this one, and build an actual website, an actual project. Okay, so we're going to build a small hotel website that has, you know, a home page, an about page, contact page, and we're going to style the navigation menu and add some background images. So we'll actually get to put something together with everything that we've learned so far. All right, so I'll see you in the next section. All right, guys, so in this video, I just want to go over a couple small things that I missed that I feel are important for you guys to know. So this is kind of just an aside. And I just have a file called index.html, and I'm going to just generate my boilerplate here. And let's just say test file, and we'll put in our style tags. And then in the body, I'm just going to have an h1, and I'm just going to say hello world, and a paragraph underneath with, let's say, 15 words. And we'll go ahead and open this. And the first thing I want to talk about is visibility. Okay, so we looked at the display property where we could display block, display inline, inline block. Later on, we're going to look at display flex, display grid. There's also something called display none, which will just remove the element from the browser completely. So I'm going to take the H1 and I'm going to set display to none and save. And notice it completely goes away. So this can be very useful, especially when it comes to building responsive websites and responsive applications, because sometimes you might want something not to show on mobile screens. So this comes in handy. Now there's also a property called visibility. Okay, so we can set visibility to hidden, and I'm going to save that. Notice it goes away, but the big difference here is that it still takes up the space. Okay, display none will just completely remove it from what's called the document object model. Visibility just basically makes it disappear or makes it invisible. It's still there in terms of the space. Okay, so that's the big difference between these two. You're going to find yourself using this much more than this, but it's still important to know that that's available. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is the order of precedence and also the important flag. So basically, if I take this H1 here and I give it a color of blue, if I save that, obviously it's going to turn blue, but if I give this a class of, let's just say hello, and up here I say dot hello and give that a color of red and save, it turns red. So normally the further down the style is, that's what's going to take precedence. However, targeting a class is going to override targeting the actual element. And if I take this class of hello and I move it above the H1, you might think that, well, now it's going to be, just fix this. You might think now it's going to be blue because this is further down. However, if I save, it's still red. And the reason for that is having a specific class and targeting that, it's going to override just the H1 itself. All right, now I just want to put this back how I had it, like that. And if you come to a situation where and this might happen if you're dealing with other style sheets, maybe you're using some kind of CSS framework and you're bringing in external style sheets as well, and you want your style to override another style, you can use the important flag. So right here where we said color blue, I'm just going to add on to the end of this, I'm going to add an exclamation and then the word important. Okay, now if I save this, you can see now it's blue because this important flag is going to say it doesn't matter if there's a class of hello or anything else, nothing else matters, this should take precedence. Okay, and the only way that this is going to work is if I also put important on this, which is stupid and defeats the purpose, but just to show you that it works, we'll go ahead and save that, and that will be red. All right, but I'm going to get rid of that. I do want to keep that though, just so you guys have it for reference. All right, and then the last thing I want to mention for now, and if I remember anything else that I forgot, I'll come back to this video and edit it, but is negative margin values. We went over margin, we went over padding, but we didn't go over negative margin values, which you really should try to avoid if you can, but it is possible. So of course we can take this H1. Actually, let's work in the class down here. We'll say margin dash top, and we say 30 pixels and save, and it gets pushed down 30 pixels. But at the same time, we can also do negative 30 pixels, and that will just bring it upwards. Okay, and you can do the same thing, like let's do margin, let's do left, negative 30 pixels, and what it should do is pull it this way. Save, and there it goes that way. All right, so you can have negative values with margins. However, you can't do it with padding. If I do it with padding and save, that's not going to work. Okay, because remember, padding is inside the border. All right, so those are the main things that I wanted to mention. So we'll move on and let's start our hotel website project.